When there's chaos all around me, feel like I could lose my mind. TV takes me somewhere better than this empty life of mine. Somehow I feel less alone, cause I know you're watching too. In a world that's filled with lies, the TV guide is always true. I want a TV guidance counselor. TV guidance counselor. Staying up to watch all night, and everything's gonna be alright with my TV guidance counselor.
Late January 2014, I record the first ever episode of TV Guidance Counselor, and the Valentine's Day of February 2014, my very first episode comes out 8 years ago. And this week, my guest will be returning to the show, my very first guest. And you'll say, Ken, it's Mike Kaplan. And you're wrong. Mike Kaplan was the first episode that came out. However, the first episode I recorded was with Mr. Josh Gondelman. Hi, Josh.
Hey, Ken. So nice to be back.
Yes.
And so nice to see you.
It's nice to see you as well. It only took 8 years.
Only took 8 years. We have seen each other in between, I think.
We have, yeah. But in that time, I think you were still in Boston 8 years ago.
No. I moved to New York about 10 and a half years ago.
Okay. You were just physically in Boston that day.
I was physically, yes, I came to record physically in person.
Yeah.
But I was back in Boston much more when I had for the first few years after I'd moved to New York.
Yeah, and especially when it wasn't a global pandemic and you could travel freely.
Yes, and I mean you live very close to my parents, and
Yeah.
the last few times I've come, I just don't go anywhere when I go see them. I go to I take the train or I drive up and I visit them and I just kind of sequester at their house.
That's fine. I wasn't going to call you out on that. Like, this wasn't an intervention to be like, Josh, I know you've been in the city. My spies around town have told me they saw you.
I also know I've been pretty cautious, and I know you have as well. I think I have some friends that are have kind of wider comfort zones, and mine, I'm still pretty careful. I'm a little bit, now that I'm back working, I had a hiatus for my job and I'm getting tested once, twice a week, depending on how much I have to go in. And so I do feel a little bit more if I go out, I'll know right away what's safe to do, rather than between seasons when I was just I guess I don't have to go anywhere, and so I shan't. I'll just stay in my apartment all day.
It's what they should do with road comics and STDs. Just test them.
Just test in every city. Yeah,
every city before they go to work. Because that brings us to a good... everyone's safe. To a good point here, in the time that since the last time we recorded, you've written 2 books?
Yeah, I think... Yes, that's right. 1.5. I co-wrote a book with my friend Joe Berkowitz.
Okay.
And then I've written a book, an essay collection, myself. Nice Try: Stories of Best Intentions and Mixed Results.
Put out 2 albums.
That's right too. Yep, 2 albums came out in this interceding time.
Gotten married.
Got married once.
And
still. We're still going.
Still going. I think won 2 Emmys.
When did we record this? In 2015, early 2015, you said, or 2014?
Early 2014.
4 Emmys.
4 Emmys?
4 Emmys.
I think because I saw 2. I think the room you're in now, I slept in before the last time I was in New York, which was 5 years ago. I think you had 2 Emmys there.
I think that there have been 2 more since then.
Yes, and got a perfect 10 out of 10 to my 9 out of 10 on Room Raiders on Twitter.
No. I only got 9 out of 10 on.
We tied.
Yes, we tied on Room Raider. The first time I got 8, and then I did some slight tweaking and moved my way up to 9, which is.
I got dinged for chord violations.
Oh sure.
Yeah.
I do pretty well. You can see a chord in here now, but usually I'm pretty good if I have to do TV or something.
Well, that's the difference. You do television from your home. You've won the Emmys for Days and Mario and for John Oliver.
I won 4 Emmys when I was working at Last Week Tonight, and we have won some awards at Jesus and Marrow. We won a Writers Guild award last year, and we're up for the one this year, which is very exciting.
Some people might know those as a WGA.
That's true.
Not WGN.
Not WGM. Yeah, I've had like an incredibly fortunate several years. It's been like a really lucky I've been really lucky to get to work on things with great teams and do stuff that people see and like. There are so many super talented people that are, whether working on stuff that's like not getting recognition even though it's wonderful, or people that are working on stuff that kind of like doesn't reflect their talent. And I've had like the great fortune to work on shows that people like with people that are like so smart and talented that I just kind of, get to write some stupid jokes and stuff.
No, I'm not saying it's because you were on my show.
Mhm.
I'm just saying that being on my show didn't prevent these things from happening.
I will also say it didn't hinder me at all. It was
Nope.
not a hindrance. And there's nothing to say that it didn't help.
It's true.
Nothing to say that it didn't put me over the top
You can't
to
prove
to
a
being a
negative.
working comedian and writer. Yeah.
Because I think when I started, I feel like you and Bulger had done a podcast briefly.
Yes.
Two Man
Yeah.
Canoe.
Yes. Which
But
I have no. I mean, that was so long. I have truly no recollection of anything I said on that podcast.
probably for the best. But no one
Yeah.
else was really doing them in the city. I feel like
No,
no one.
Boston was kind of a podcast desert, and we were like, we're gonna be the guys that break out. And then what we realized is, yeah, there's like, what is a regional podcast? Podcasts are for everywhere, and we were just like doing it for our friends essentially.
I wish a lot of other people came to that revelation recently, even. But you guys were smart
that like, hey, podcasts are for other people. They're
for
not
everybody.
just for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Why are you even releasing this? You could
Wait,
just
this
play
what
the
this
tape
is
back.
is a dinner party without
Yes.
food.
And no other people. So it's funny. I never listened to old episodes of my show. Excuse me, I'm not going to cut that out. That cough, not or this
Keep
one
it.
either.
It's real. This is what the people want. This is punk. This is the new punk rock.
It's true.
It's going on a podcast.
More than the crypto punks, but
Way more. I'm gonna chew later. People are gonna lose their minds, and they're not gonna appreciate it for another 30 years.
yeah, it's going to be amazing. But I almost never listen to episodes back. So it takes me approximately, I think, about 4 hours to every hour of release show if I include like
Sure.
editing. And
Yeah.
so I usually never listen. I've not ever re-listened to your episode, but the things I recall is my very first edit I had to do because you told a story about someone that you called in high school period fucker.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, I didn't call him that. That was his nickname. I wasn't on nickname terms with this guy. But I remember very distinctly. I don't want to say the guy's name because he's like a real person living out of the world. But it's so funny that I remember them being like, the kids I went to high school with being like, "Oh, this guy, we call him period fucker," and why? And I was like, I don't know why. And they're like, because he fucked his chick on a period, guy. And I was
We
like,
wouldn't want that to
sure.
get out. That would ruin his life.
Well, I just mean like I don't want someone's like gross nickname from high school trailing. I don't this is not like an anti-period sex sentiment. The sentiment is anti-gross nickname.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been like, oh, because when he bones, it takes a whole school period. 42 minutes, man.
Or he only has sex wearing like a powdered wig and a frilly collar.
Yeah.
Period garb.
Or when he finishes, he goes, full stop.
you know, uh, and this guy, we call him exclamation fucker.
Because he just yells the whole time. One of my favorite
Geronimo! Or whatever.
One of my favorite jokes, and this is, no one ever finds this funny when I say this, and I say it much less often now because the only people I interact with is my wife and my dogs. But if you're like, oh, I'm going to be cooking, is it going to, you want me to shut the door? Is the noise going to bother you? Something like that. And then they always say no. And then I always go, I'm going to be screaming the whole time.
I like that bit.
Yeah.
I think that's a fun bit.
And that's because it's you, or I'll be like, I'm going to take a shower or go to the bathroom. Because then I just picture someone in the shower just like, like nonstop. It's funny to me.
Just like,
Yeah.
the
Oh,
whole
I'm going to be
time.
screaming. Yeah.
I'll tell you my favorite. I haven't been doing this as much lately because I've been using like a lot of like paying with the Bluetooth on my phone or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, you're a
But
rich, famous celebrity now.
I don't think you have to be famous to have Bluetooth in this day and
I don't
age.
know. All right, Brooklyn.
But my favorite old bit was the was when someone would go, I'd be at a store and they would give you the total, and oh, 1572, and I would go deal before I paid in cash, which is
Yeah.
it just feels like less you're making less of a like it's like less of a deal thing to do when you pay with your phone or whatever.
Yeah, my awful because neither of us have children, by the way, everybody,
No.
despite these dad jokes
Yes.
that have happened to us in the last 8 years.
Yes.
Um, but my thing, and I talked about this on an album once, is what I used to do is if they were like, that'll be 1972, it'd be like, great year.
Yep, that's a classic. I
Um,
love that one.
but
Very
instead,
fun.
to your deal, I usually go, bargain.
That's fun too. That's like a very because I like it because it's at no one's expense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not that like all jokes have to be benevolent, but I do feel like if you're just deploying jokes like in retail settings, they shouldn't make the person working feel bad. And so I feel like if they roll their eyes at you and they're like, I saw some chump today. That's fine. I don't mind being
Yeah, I'd
that.
argue it's at your expense.
Yes, totally at my expense. But I don't want to be like you be like a bargain is like you're not hassling whoever's behind the counter to the point where they're like, "Ugh, now I'm dealing with this shit."
Yeah, they're not like 12.99, and you're like, how much for the girl?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Yeah,
exactly.
it's
Right.
not
You're
that. Yeah.
not. They're not like, ugh, gross, and I just have to be there and be like, "Thank you, sir."
Yeah. Although here's the thing that's happened to me. So I think you're a couple of years younger than me, maybe 3 or 4 years younger than me.
Mhm.
I'm 41. And I realized around the time I turned like 38, um, sort of cashiers and teenagers
Yeah.
stopped acknowledging that I exist. So they don't make eye contact. They don't respond to anything I say. So
Yes.
they just ring you up and don't really talk to you. And no matter what you say to them, they do not respond.
I am in such. I'm 37, and I go such a small circuit most days around my neighborhood that like the people that I see regularly, I'm like truly a regular at like there's two bodegas right at the corner of my street, and one I go more for groceries and one makes sandwiches, and so I go so that I'm a regular at both of those. There's a Dunkin' nearby that I'm a regular at that everybody there knows me, and then like the liquor store 3 blocks down, and like the I I think it would be hard to ignore people at that level when it's like I go into the same, I mean the liquor store less often, but like I'm
Yeah, I
in
was
the
waiting for
Dunkin'.
you to say that.
I mean, I go to all these places probably once a day.
Yeah.
But all the other places, I mean, at least like probably 4 times a week in each of them, just like little, popping in for chips or whatever.
Well, I feel like in New York, though, you're less likely to run it. Like here in the suburbs,
Yes.
every store is exclusively staffed by teenagers.
Right. I mean, I think that's true that it's like less turnover, like in these positions of like kids that have a job for like a summer job or like uh, a year at this job before they go away to school or something. And this is like people that are in the neighborhood, and especially like a corner store might be a family business or whatever, and so it's people that are like they're out and back in the long term. My
They
the
live in the store. They sleep on a
They
sack of
live in the store.
rice.
That's like the way teachers. I'm like, I think that the way people think of teachers live in the school. We're just like, he sleeps in the store, right?
Do
Um,
you you may or may not recall this, but we're gonna get deep in the weeds, everybody. Sean Sullivan, who used to do the anniversary specials with me the first few years and then stopped talking to me once he had children, uh, and I and Nate Johnson and Renato Tuco used to be in a sketch group, and we had this sketch about teachers living in the school.
mhm.
And the reason we had that was because there was a shop teacher at Melrose High School who was living in the school, and I caught him.
Oh wow.
He made himself a bed he like welded a bed together. And he used to take showers in the gym.
Sure, 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 sure.
Sad, yeah. In hindsight, sad. At the time, I thought it was hilarious.
I mean, I don't know. When you're like 16, I don't know how else you would respond. Like, you would have to have such an attuned, like, maybe that's not true. I will say, you would have to have a more finely tuned sense of circumstance and empathy than I had when I was 16.
For adults, at least. I like
For
if a
adults,
kid, I would be like, oh my god, that's so
yes, of
bad.
course.
Yeah,
If there was like a kid that lived in the school, I think I would have at least the sense of like, oh, this shouldn't be. Like something went wrong for this to happen. But like I think I ascribed an agency to all adults where if a teacher was living in the school, I'd be like, he must want this.
yeah, or like you deserve this, jerk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But like obviously not true in every instance, but I do think that's totally different. Like with a kid, I might have been like, that's fucking weird. This fucking kid lives in the school. But I don't think I'd be like, oh, because I think I would know, like, what happened to this kid's parents? Like, do they have no family? Is there no other place they can stay? Like, some support system failed. But with an adult, for sure, would be like, he's just a weirdo who likes to make his own beds and is trying to save money.
Yeah, or like girls are horses.
Ugh.
That's my favorite Boston failure question. If someone's a failure, girls are horses.
I don't know that one. I mean, I understand it when you said it,
Oh, it's a
but
that was a classic like old man one. Like whenever if someone was talking to him, it'd be like, Jimmy, yeah, he's fucking living in a taxi cab now. And like it'd always be my group be like, girls are horses, fucking horses.
and then I mean, it's much better than because there's less the horse racing kind of went away, and now it was dog racing for a while. So
Girls are
just
dogs.
like girls are greyhounds. Like,
Hey,
ugh.
bitches are bitches.
Oh no, I don't like this whole hypothetical old man.
No, no. Well, they're not hypothetical. They're my
Hey, right,
family.
these real old men that you are describing and embodying.
Yeah. Yep. You know what's funny, and this is, and people will talk about television in a moment. We have this week's edition of TV Guide that I don't think Josh has looked at yet, and I've
I
barely
have
looked
not,
at.
but I do have it. I've seen
Yeah.
the front.
Um, I've been listening to a lot of like books on tape
Mhm.
or audiobooks as people call
Do you
them.
ever so there is audiobooks, right? But I feel like this is like my I'm 37, like I said. I've already started doing that thing that, like my grandparents would do when you'd put in a CD, you'd play a CD, and they'd be like, "Oh, where did you get that record?" And you're just like, "I'm not gonna." They just like didn't. They're like, "We're not gonna bother with the new words. We have the old ones. You understand? They're backwards compatible,
Yeah,
or forwards compatible rather." And so, uh, I'm already there with stuff like book on tape and like yeah for sure like I'll say like oh do you want me to tape I tape this conversation. It's like nobody I don't put anything on tape. It's all digital for
yeah,
sure.
of course. But what are you gonna say? Like, do you want me to digitally record this?
I
See,
know.
because like record, you can get away with because it could be. You could argue it was a recording. They were
Yes, yes,
saying,
yes, yes, yes.
but
And
like,
it's like there's still like best record is the
yeah,
Grammy.
yeah, LP. But like book on tape is like three formats old.
Yep. Yeah, 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 yeah. There were CDs in the mix. And it's even like an audiobook is a good clean version of that. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like we figured it out. We have the new one, but I still use the old one.
yeah. We don't have to go. Oh, let me listen to an MP3 file book.
Yes, exactly. Right,
It's
right,
just
right.
it's an audiobook. Yeah.
It's an
Um,
audiobook.
but I
Very easy, intuitive. Everyone, you don't lose anyone. We're like, I was listening to this audiobook. You're like, oh, what the? Oh, a
what are you
book on
talking about?
tape.
Yeah. Oh, a tape book? Tape books. Because, and you probably have this too, like for years, I did like a ton of stuff for Audible, like random stuff. Or like whenever you
Yes.
do a festival, there you'd get like a swag bag, there'd be like 30 like credits for Audible in there or whatever. There's tons and tons of them. So I had like a stack of like 200 books worth of Audible books that I never, so like when pandemic happened, I started, or pandemers, I started getting those all. And I grabbed one about the mafia in New England,
Hmm.
and I had to stop listening to it because people I knew were in it, and it
Oh
gave me
no.
childhood flashbacks.
Oh
Like
jeez.
there was this Italian mobster guy who was just like a fucking animal murderer, and
Oh
the
no.
audiobook actually played some of the FBI wiretap tapes of these people. And there's one,
Really?
oh yeah, they used to have this office in Providence that they called the office, and it was like a front for it was like a vending machine company or something. But so they had tapped the wires in there, and this one guy, there's audio of him going, "I just fucking love killing. I got an aptitude. I got an aptitude for it." Right?
Some people do.
Yeah. So that
I'd be
guy,
bad at it.
I don't have the aptitude for it. My uncle used to tend bar at this mob bar and deal coke, and my mother would dump me there so he could babysit me. But I remembered as a kid, I was like maybe 6, and I'd just bring like some comics and draw. And that guy came in and he's like, "Hey, your nephew's a real handsome guy here. He's gonna be a lady killer." And I went, "Get away from me." And the guy was like, and everyone was like, and then the guy was like, "Hey, what's this kid's problem?" And I said, "I don't like Italians."
Oh no, that's you can't follow. You can't say that.
I was like 6 years old, and it was like needle scratch. Everyone was like, and then some Goomba like hit him. He goes, "Hey, that kid don't like Italians. He busted your balls." And then everyone laughed, and it was like, but I was listening to this book, and then they were like detailing all the horrible things that
Yo.
specific guy did, and I was like, I mean, I wasn't wrong, but I just imagine my uncle was like, "Oh shit, I'm gonna get murdered now."
Oh no. Brutal.
Yeah.
Um. Oh no. I mean, you certainly didn't like the Italian people in that room.
Oh God, no, no, definitely not. But
But
like,
I feel like you can't. That's you can't. 6 years old is about the threshold for saying that.
yeah, 6-year-old me was like, well, how am I gonna? I'm just gonna explain to this guy I don't like Italians,
Right. I
because
can
he was
explain
like
those.
super like gold chains and like hey hey, and I was like,
Italian also probably like the last nationality of people that you can say that about. Like
oh
you can
yeah,
even tell that story. Like if you were like, and this happened, and I was in a drinking establishment with a number of Puerto Rican gentlemen. You'd be like, I can't even tell this story, even though I
yeah.
was 6 at the time.
So it was it was the triads, and they come in. I'm like, yeah,
Anyway.
that's yeah. So yeah, so I don't even know why I said that, but I had to stop listening to it because of that issue caused me a problem. Oh, it was because I was thinking about like things that when you're a kid, like you realize the gravity of stuff more when you're an adult,
Sure. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
I could see through the eyes of everyone else in that room that scenario at that point.
Right. You're like, oh, you're like, I'm in a situation that like the grown-ups have a fear that I haven't yet learned. There's
Yes.
like a sense that I don't know what the danger is, but it's present.
I said this on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and I was reminded that when I was working at WBZ, I was working the front desk, and Dan Duquette came in,
Hmm.
who I didn't know who that was. I
Yeah.
presume you do.
General
Uh,
manager of the Red Sox at the
yeah,
time,
he
right?
owned the Red Sox at one point, and he was there to see Bob Lobel, and he was like, "I'm Dan Duquette to see Bob Lobel," and I I was trying to write down his name, and I forgot his name, and then I'm like, "Oh, Bob, what's your name again?" And the guy goes, "Dan Duquette. I own the Red Sox," and then I went, "Oh, I don't care."
That I mean, that's like a freedom though. Like to know cuz you had to not that you had to know who he was, but that you had to be like I know it doesn't matter to me who he is
Yeah.
and it's fine if he knows that even if it will make him mad.
Like I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I think that was my explanation was like, "Oh, the reason I forgot your name is because I don't care."
It means nothing to me.
Yeah, you're
Right.
just okay. That one I don't feel bad about. God damn it. That one I
I
feel
don't think
great.
you have to. This is just one rich guy that you offended once.
Yeah. Oh, there's been a lot of those. Whole lot of those. So anyway, I thought it'd be fun if we looked at this week in
Let's do it.
television and said, "What are we going to watch this week?" Because I watch almost zero like current television. I presume you probably don't either because you work in it.
I watch. There are a few shows that I'm pretty current with, um, and then some that I'm like I catch up a little bit. Like so the shows that are on now that like I watch week I've been watching week after week are uh Abbott Elementary and Grand Crew, which are very funny, very, very funny, enjoyable network sitcoms.
Sitcoms, okay.
Bob's Burgers. I've been in on that for years. Um, the Righteous Gemstones on HBO. Uh, And there's one other thing that we've been like watching regularly. Oh, that After Party on Apple Plus, which is it's
Okay.
like a fun comedy mystery. And until recently, the best TV experience I've had in a while was Yellow Jackets. And I don't just say that because I work for Showtime, but like watching that week over week or week after week and like fan theories and just like discussing the twists and turns with friends was like a real bright spot in entertainment of the last like several months, if not like throughout the whole pandemic. It was like very, very fun. And we had my friend Allison Leiby, who's a really funny comedian, would come over like, and it was at a place where we would like all rapid test, and then she would come over and we would have like snacks and drinks, and she would watch with me and my wife Maris, and it was a great time. And I like there's nothing on right now that's quite that like compelling of like, did you see this? We have to talk about it now before someone else spoils it for
Right.
someone. But there is like a fair amount of TV that I've been watching, especially because I'm out doing less stand up. But it's also I'm just watching like a lot of NBA basketball night tonight.
I mean, you're a b-ball fan. That's what
I'm
we
a
call
b-ball
it.
fan.
Yeah.
That's I first and foremost. I identify myself as a b-ball fan, and of all the different things about me, that's what people need to
BBF.
know.
Uh, Josh
BBF, yeah, I
Gondelman,
call myself
BBF.
BBF.
Yeah.
But but yeah, so like most nights, I think live, I would be watching an NBA game. Is the
Because
fact.
so you're watching an unusual amount of day and date stuff, I think, for people now, or stuff seems to be shifting as well. Like people are
Mhm.
binging stuff less, and there are a lot of shows that like you got to wait that week in the middle, and
I
I appreciate that.
I prefer to not binge.
Yeah.
Um, we binged a show recently and it was good, but I wish that I hadn't felt like I had to do that. It was Search Party. It was the last season of Search Party, and we it all came out at once on HBO Max, and we watched it in like 3 days maybe, and it was I really love that show, but I wish that it had come out week after week because I feel like it would have been a very enjoyable experience. And that's how the first season was released. It was on TBS and it came out, on linear TV, one episode a week, and I like that. Certain shows that there's that kind of hybrid model, right, where this is the After Party did this, and I think like the Flight Attendant maybe was like 3 episodes right up front, or and then they kind of dole them out like one, two, or three a week, and I like the waiting.
Yeah, it lets you sit and ruminate about the show. Like you remember stuff
Yep,
more.
yep.
You also can have some theories, and you go, oh, that was interesting.
And
Um,
and I
I will
don't
binge.
like
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I don't like the pressure of having to watch a whole season of something over a weekend,
Mhm.
um, because I most of the time I don't either I don't have the time or I don't choose to experience it that way, and then I feel like I get left behind. Like I feel like I might never watch Squid Game because everybody I know watched it within like 5 days. It felt
Right,
like, and then
right.
I just got left behind culturally.
That's how I was like Tiger King and all that other
Yep.
stuff. Where it's like, because
Yep.
the other thing is, I think there's less pressure to binge the stuff, so you have it done from Monday when you're in work and people are going to talk about it.
For sure.
There's also um, a sort of freedom and something that even when we binge a show now, even if it's like an old show, like we did a rewatch or a first watch of Dawson's Creek and Alias and like a few other shows over the pandemic, but we'd watch like two a night. But then it's like something to look forward to every
Yes. Yes.
night,
Yes.
which is
Yep.
kind of nice. But I will binge a show like Nailed It or something, like where it's not like
Yes.
I'll watch all like 10 of those in two
That doesn't
hours.
bother me. Like I don't mind kind of scarfing down that kind of show. We're doing that with Steph and Aisha Curry have like a newlywed game type show called
Okay.
About Last Night, and it's like just been very pleasant to watch a couple of episodes because we just started Station 11 tonight, which is very heavy, and we're a few months behind on that, but the first episode, beautiful and like really well done but incredibly heavy, and like we need like a light show to counterbalance it, and this show is just like so silly, and you can kind of like be on your phone if you get a text, and you don't have to worry about like, wait a minute, what did Mario Cantone and his husband say to answer this question. It's like you'll catch it on the next one, and it's fine and
You
very
mean
fun.
one of the two famous people from the town that I live in and you
From the
grew
town
up
of
in?
Stoneham, of course.
Yes.
Mario Cantone and Nancy Kerrigan being the other one, but I
We
don't
also
think
have
she's on this show.
Killer Kowalski,
Killer Kowalski, that's true. And there's other
Mike
notable
Ness
people. Oh,
of Social
wait, really?
Distortion. Yeah.
I always forget that. And then like some comedy people, Jay Larson and
Yep.
Matt Mira.
Yep. Um, although Matt Mira, I don't believe him.
You don't think he's from Stoneham? And shout out to Joe Haggerty, who's a Bruins writer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I feel like he's from Lowell. I told him that too.
You just were like, I feel like you're from Lowell.
He's like, "Oh, you're right." So yeah, weirdly, and I like when I think about me 8 years ago when I started this, I never thought this would be true, but I cut the cord, so like I don't even have regular TV or cable anymore,
Oh, interesting.
which I
We do.
never
I mean,
thought
we
would
have
be.
so much. We like are all out with all the cable and the streaming stuff, and it's
Well,
so
you're
we
big
have
bucks.
yeah, that's what it is. And I'm still in deep debt from Netflix and Hulu Plus and all that. Deeply in
Yeah.
debt. I just everything I make in television goes right back into television.
That's how they get you that. It's like a pyramid scheme for
It
TV
is like a
writers.
pyramid.
Yeah.
Yeah, TV writing is like the Herbalife of writing jobs. No,
Although
it's
when I worked in the sales department of WBZ, I learned that first of all, the like, part of the business model for TV sales at the time was like get new, young, hungry people in. They'll bust their ass. They'll get maybe one account, and then they'll get fired. And then that one account they got will just get absorbed by like the person who's been there forever.
sure.
But all these like new graduates would lease a fancy car, and then a lot of them would end up owing the company money when they left
Oh, geez.
because you could buy ads like say I'm like Josh, you want to buy ads for your pool cleaning service on
Hell
my
yeah, I
TV
do.
station.
Otherwise, how's anyone gonna know about my pool cleaning service,
Yeah,
Ken?
I got to put it on there. They're $50 a spot, and I guarantee you'll get like a 1-2 share on all of them, and you buy them right now. So then like you pay me, but then like they get like a half a point share instead of a 1-2. So now I have
Yeah.
to give you your money back.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So sometimes
Sure.
yeah, they already get paid. So they would have to like cut a check to get fired, which is one of the saddest things I've ever heard of my
That's really
life.
rough. That's like sleeping in a bed you made in the school.
I think it might be worse than that.
It might be
Um,
worse.
so I was looking at this, and first of all, the first ad in this TV guide is for the Jitterbug phone.
Sure. Well, it's like who's the market for physical TV guide at this point? It's
Nobody.
like
I don't
I
even think
mean
it's
it's
old people.
people who use the jitterbug.
Is it even though? Like who? Like to the point of like cutting the cord, or like if you're if you're the kind of person that would use a TV guide now,
Yes.
you don't care enough about anything to use the TV guide.
I think if you get the TV guide, it's because you don't know how to cancel the TV guide subscription.
That's also but you probably don't know how to change the channel on your TV or even turn the TV off.
It's just on and you watch what you get shown.
Here's what that jitterbug's used for. Hello? How do I put Jeopardy on? That's what it's used for. Which, speaking of Jeopardy, the next thing there's an article about Amy Schneider in here,
Oh
and
yeah.
I've had brunch with her
Really?
because before she transitioned, she was married to a friend of mine who you know as well, someone we've had breakfast with, I think.
Interesting.
And in where were we? In California, yeah, not
Right
for San
on.
Francisco. And
Oh cool.
what's the place next to San Francisco that's not Berkeley?
Oakland?
Oakland. That's what it is. Yeah, I had brunch with her
In
in
Oakland with
Oakland.
her? Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. I mean like I'm so annoying whenever somebody I know like because we work in comedy, we know a lot of people that are on TV or like involved in TV, and I really take my wife out of stuff. Watching it's even just like someone in the background of a shot, and I'd be like, "Oh, Steve," and she's just like, "Come on, that's
Yeah.
not Steve right now." We just saw that in a Super Bowl commercial, Ahmed Barucha
Yes.
had
Yeah.
had a small role, and I texted him. I was just like, I always love like there's always some LA comedy people in the Super Bowl commercials. Matt Bronger was in a
Last year,
fancy
yeah,
one
with
last
Martha
year.
Stewart. Yeah.
Yep, and That was, it was for, what is it, Miracle Grow, or the opposite, Roundup?
Something like that. Yeah.
It was for either
Miracle
making
Kill.
plants grow or murdering them.
Yes. It was it is weird. Like I realize it's not normal to watch television and for most people and to constantly see people you know on or like
Yes.
people who've been in my house.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think totally that. It's like, I mean, there's people, this is not like a, I don't mean this as a flex, but it's like, um Ali Wong, crashed at my apartment in Alston that was like super run down
Oh yeah.
years ago when she would come through Boston, or had come through Boston to
She
do
used to do
stand up.
my show at the studio.
Yeah, and and it's just like, wow, she's so so funny and such a huge deal now and such a big star, and I'm just like, oh yeah, that is such like a fun. I mean, I imagine people have the same, like people who play in bands have that with like, oh yeah, this. I mean, you have that experience too, right? Of like, this band slept on my floor for 3 nights.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean it was like we knew the guys in what the hell was that band? Good Charlotte.
Hmm.
And then do you remember that band The Bravery?
Yes.
So I was DJing one night, which is hilarious that I used to DJ sometimes, which is just
Yeah.
like that is not a Ken Reed activity. But I was DJing at the Paradise and they were doing a like release show for the Bravery.
Okay.
And they showed up with all their asymmetrical haircuts and being like super cool early 2000s. And I
Hmm.
recognized them and I went, "You guys were Scaba the Hut."
They were called Scaba the Hut.
Yep. And they were like, hey, shut up, man. Yeah, that was a
Even
long time
for a
ago.
ska band, that is
Yeah.
a silly name.
Well, I was in Indianapolis a few years ago and I was seeing the Descendants and the Smoking Popes, Josh
Hmm.
Cater of the Smoking Popes, who does the theme song to this show. Um, and there was a band called the Wilhelm Scream that was
Yes. Oh,
performing
I
on the
know
show.
them. They used to be Smackin' Isaiah. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
were a ska band called Smacking Isaiah in Massachusetts. And they take themselves real serious now. And
I
I was
remember.
like,
Yeah,
Smacking Isaiah?
I remember that. I will, because my buddy Dan Levy has played in bands forever, and so like I would see all those like ska punk hardcore bands playing at like Elks Lodge shows and shit,
Yeah.
and so I know like all those bands like uh Jericho, which then became Smoke Before Fire or
Yeah.
something like that. I wish I could remember that more clearly. But like I just remember seeing all those bands and then I'm like, "Oh, hey, they're still banding, kicking ass, playing all over the place." Cuz I totally like I just lost, it's not that like, I mean that sounds so condescending, but I just kind of lost touch with that cuz it's not music that I listen to all the time.
Right.
And
Or that you
and
probably
my
would have
buddy
listened
Dan was
to.
my
Yeah.
connection
If
to
you
it.
probably
More
would
of
have
my
listened to
connection.
then either, if you didn't know someone that was sort of playing
Right.
them.
I mean, like that, that I was not like really in the hardcore scene, except like my buddy Dan has always played in punk bands. And so I would always see punk and hardcore
Breaking news,
bands.
everybody. Josh Gondelman wasn't in the hardcore scene. a
um,
few months ago I had Pete Holmes on and we were talking about because he used to go to punk shows and his favorite band has just been the Unseen who are like buddies of mine from way back, which
oh,
is hilarious.
cool.
And he was like, "What?" Which is ridiculous. He used to write them fan letters.
Oh, that's so nice.
It was
What a
very
nice
funny.
thing to do.
Um, so this issue, there's a lot of stuff in here that I've heard of, but I have zero interest in. And I should mention last week's issue, which we were going to do, but both Josh and I had a terrible week last week, so we pushed this back a couple days. Had Bob Saget on the cover, which was very sad. Did you ever work with
Yeah.
Bob?
I never did. I know you did a lot of times, and after he passed, I thought of all the lovely things you had said about him and what a kind and generous person he was.
Yeah, he was amazing. I had like a family member of mine. I won't out them, but they got diagnosed with scleroderma. There's a couple different versions of scleroderma. There's like a very deadly one, and then one that's not as deadly. But he didn't know at the time, and Bob's sister died of that, so he was on the board of the Scleroderma Foundation. So I emailed Bob just asking like, "Hey, what's a good resource I can point my family member to so they can read about this or something?" And he emailed me back within a minute and was like, "What's
Wow.
their number?" And he
Wow.
called them and he got them an appointment for like with the best doctor on the East Coast and then he paid for it.
That's so lovely.
Like
What a generous thing to do.
I was very
And I mean, he must have done stand up because he really enjoyed doing stand up, because I
yeah.
can't imagine with all the like giant long running high profile TV work he did that he like needed the money from like a weekend at a club or like a one night at a theater or something.
No, he just liked doing stand up, which was funny because he would write jokes constantly. Like whenever, like he had a notebook, he was just constantly filling with jokes,
Yeah.
and never did one of them because he'd go on stage and it would just be put out fires the whole time.
Oh, sure, sure,
But
sure. Because you
if
would get
he
a lot of people coming out to see him, just like
suck a
Tanner,
dick,
Tanner. Yeah,
yeah, suck a dick, Daddy
yeah,
Tanner.
yep, yep, yep.
But you know, if he got one joke out, he'd be like, "That was fun." So he just, but
What an
yeah.
incredible way to be.
Oh yeah, so it was, I was shocked by that, but a lot of people have died in the last year, which has been awful. But then there's the thing about the new Law and Order, which I never watched and don't care to watch. But Jeff Donovan's in the new Law and Order, who is again from Massachusetts, from Amesbury, and he was in Burn Notice, which I loved.
Oh, sure.
He is, he was at the roast of Lenny Clark during one of the Boston Comedy
Oh,
Festivals,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he got up to go to the bathroom, and John O'Zalay did at the same time. And he turned to John O'Zalay and went, "Don't follow me to the bathroom, bro."
Just couldn't imagine two people having to pee at the same time.
I mean, it was Jono.
Hey, Jono has to pee when Jono has to pee. He's not
It's
a
true.
stalker.
It's true. But I wouldn't want him following me in the bathroom either. And it wasn't a single stall.
Right,
it is,
right, right, right.
yeah.
Single stall, you go, hey, I you can't come in here. I have to go in here. But when it's it's like a full bathroom at whatever the Hard Rock or wherever it is, where it's like a bathroom for 12 people.
Can I have the room? You know, it's like when you're in an, what is your protocol when you're in an ATM or you're waiting to use an ATM? Will you go in if someone else is
Oh,
in there?
interesting. I think it depends. The one that I use that's close to me has two terminals and it's pretty wide. So if the weather is bad in pre-COVID conditions, I would go in and chill. But like if it's a one person, then you wait outside, I think,
Yeah.
right?
That's what I always do. But then I hate when I'm in there and then someone will come in and I'm
Yeah.
like, it feels like they've come in the bathroom stall with you.
Yes, 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 yes. It's too because it's like you can see through the windows. There's only room for one person to do business here, right?
That's right.
Like there's nothing for you to unless it's really again, unless it's like raining or super cold when it's like please come in and take shelter from the elements. There's nothing that's like what are you going to do?
And it also makes you like, I'm not doing a ton of transactions, but
Yeah.
if I do like one extra button, it makes me, because they're like, oh, I'm like, get up, back off, man. Don't follow
Yeah.
me into the ATM.
Right. What are you? And it's not like a fear. It's just like, what? I mean, I guess if they go over to the thing on the side and they're like filling out a form or something, you go, okay, well, this is a parallel play or whatever. Both of us can engage in this necessary activity, and it saves you a couple minutes. But if you're just like waiting behind me, it's like, hey, what? Why? For what?
How much time are you saving?
Right. So to get through this door, or like, right, what is outside that you're avoiding?
Who you running from?
who, who are you running from?
Who you hiding from in him?
And why? And now they see me. They're
Yeah,
gonna get me on my
you're
way
gonna
out.
think I'm with you, and I
Yep.
don't like Italians. Um,
Immediately reverting to your 6-year-old problematic self.
that's right, exactly. So on the Monday here, which was last night, recording this on Tuesday, I
Yes.
think we are. It's Tuesday.
Is it you
Um,
say?
which was Valentine's Day. There's not a lot of romantic stuff on. They have some pics in here. One of them being the Gilded Age, which I haven't seen, but I do like Christine Baranski.
She's great. My wife has been watching The Gilded Age. Um, I know a few people that have been watching it that I think the sense is like it's very baroque and that's enjoyable. But I don't have any idea what it's about. Um, if you had if you until I thought about it, if you'd been like, what do you think The Gilded Age is about? I would have been like, it's about like Alexander the Great. And then I would realize that I was thinking of like the Bronze Age.
Right,
And I also don't know what that is.
right. I would think it would be like a weird remake of the Golden Girls.
Yes, good, but the Gilded Age, right, was like that kind of like high, like tycoons and railroad barons, right? Like in the U.S., isn't that what the Gilded
Yeah,
Age
isn't
was?
it like it's like the Great Gatsby era? It's
Hmm.
like old money Brahmins kind of thing.
Yeah, and it was before what happened before, like the New Deal, right? It
Yeah.
preceded the New Deal, and it was what destroyed our economy.
Yes, and it's the people who are still desperately trying to hang on to their wealth for their bloodline, even though they don't deserve it.
Right, 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 right. You're like, I didn't. It's like, do you ever see that where you're like, oh, I guess the Rockefellers are still rich, but they're just low profile now.
To me, that's like rich people like that, like where their like great grandkids still have their money. That's like a guy who did an evening at the Improv and is still trying to use it as a credit. It's like,
Right, right,
dude,
right,
get
right. It's
over
like
it.
just because your great grandfather, like found oil or stole oil from someone, that means you don't have to have a job. All right,
How does that work?
I
Yeah, but I
know.
mean, I guess in the inverse, but if my parents are poor, it means I have to work more. So,
No, that's not fair. You should switch. If your parents grow up poor, then you should get the oil money.
I think that would I'd have no problem with that.
That's very fair, I think.
So last night I did watch some Antiques Roadshow, but I watched the episode that aired at 8 o'clock on PBS. I watched on YouTube.
Right, because you're saying you don't have live TV.
Yeah, I mean I do have an antenna, so like
Got it.
I
So you
noticed
can
that
watch
I
PBS.
would watch PBS, and I noticed that antenna TV is showing Barney Miller, so like I probably would have watched that last night. But there's kind of nothing else that appealed to me.
No, we didn't even look last night. We watched that Stephanie Shikari game show, and there were some people, some comedy people that are in our world. Mario Cantone was on one of the episodes we watched last night, as I mentioned. Pride of Stoneham, Massachusetts. Um, Lauren Lapkus and her husband Mike Castle, who's a comedian and actor. I'm trying to think. Oh, Moshe Kasher and Natasha Leggero.
Okay,
So
that
like
makes sense.
it was fun to be like, oh, fun comedy people, and then it was like more than one of Steph Curry's um Los Angeles Golden State Warrior teammates and their partners, which is like very funny. That the production company was like, Steph, you should text your coworkers and have them come on your TV show.
Somebody's sick. Can you get someone to do this
Can you
spot?
get Draymond Green, who is actually really funny? I mean, he's like a very funny, outspoken guy. I don't know if you've ever seen him like commentate or anything, but he's such a charismatic and like and I mean he's like incredibly knowledgeable about basketball, obviously, but he's so charming and charismatic that when he's hurt or whatever, or when his team is out of the playoffs, they immediately bring him on TV as a commentator.
They're like, nice, he pulled a hammy. We can get him
Yeah,
on as
yeah.
a
They're like, let's
commentator.
get him. Yeah, let's get him in the booth. And he was like very. I think some of the contestants were a little bit more reserved, but he was like very outspoken about just like had his head ears covered, and they were like, what can he not go a month without? And his wife was kind of talking through it and was like, I mean, I think he'll probably say sex, but maybe coffee. And then he gets out and he's like, I mean, the answer's sex. She might have said something else, but and he's just like very funny and forthright.
You know the famous dating game story blooper,
Which
right?
one?
The where's the craziest place you ever made whoopee?
Oh, right. Yes, 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 yes.
And it's in the butt. So,
Very funny.
but for years that was thought to be an urban legend. Like people are like that didn't really happen, and it did. Like people have dug up the footage, and it's hilarious.
Incredible. It's a great answer.
It's fantastic. I love Family Feud answer. Like I
They're
love
great.
game show
It's great.
bloopers.
I
It's
I love all that like kind of candid person not trying to be funny necessarily, but like just kind of shooting from the hip. But the Family Feud ones are great. But also the funniest thing about craziest place you've ever made Whoopi being like in the butt, right? Is that the check down list of answers was like the mouth, like it was all just like parts of a human body.
yeah.
They
It
weren't
was
even
not like
thinking about
in a Chevy.
locations.
Yeah,
Right, right,
at
right.
the
They weren't even
park.
like phone booth. They were just like, what human orifices have I been
Yeah, and they were
inside,
like,
and
"It is
which of
that
those do I
crazy?"
consider to be the most zany?
It is that. I mean, there's only like four options in there. Everyone has them, so is it that crazy? I don't
Right.
know.
I mean, like, I guess, right. Like a lot of people, that's their go-to.
Yeah,
So,
it might be
but
crazy. Like if you were, Amish. All of them be crazy.
I mean, I guess feet would be weirder, but I've never done that one. And then they're like, location, and you're like, oh, in a space. I was on the space shuttle and I was making love on the space
Yeah,
shuttle.
zero gravity.
But
In
that's
a
just,
morgue.
that was just a work thing. That was a work party,
In a
an
morgue.
astronaut work party.
Oh wait, did you say where or who? My God. Yeah, and it's funny too because I've sort of come out of the fog of the Grimace presidency.
Sure.
He who should not be named. Um, and I was glued to news stuff every night, like mentally. I was like, I have to watch it all the time, like it matters.
I hate watching especially like a lot of cable news. I don't like the experience of watching it on TV. I'm like much more of a news reader, and I think it's because I find the pacing of it overwhelming to me a lot of the time.
I would listen to it a lot. So I
Mm.
use like I have smart speakers, so I would much rather listen to the audio of like the 24-hour news channels, but I still shouldn't like I just had it on nonstop all the time. And so in the last year or so, now that I don't care anymore, I've like actually started watching other things and like I can't even deal with those. So like tonight, I don't know what I would have watched. It's funny because when I'm looking at this lineup for Tuesday, February 15th,
Yes.
there is a bunch of stuff on here that I love. Like again, Barney Miller's on, or Quantum Leap is on.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but I feel like all that would make me do is I'd go, oh, let me pull that up and watch that on demand.
Totally. I think I'm trying to see. Wait, which I might be on the wrong page. Oh, I've also been watching a little bit of the Olympics live.
Okay. Do
I
you
watched
usually do
this.
that?
Well, it was. I mean, most of the time there's no Olympics, so not that often.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
But it was this last weekend. Maris and I were sitting around like trying to figure out what to watch, and I was like, the Olympics are happening. We haven't watched any of it, so we watched the men's snowboarding. So we missed Chloe Kim, who was the like great women's snowboarder, but we saw the last competition of Sean
Sean
White.
White.
Yeah, who's in his mid 30s, which is, I mean, he was like 7 years, 6 or 7 years older than the next oldest contestant in the snowboarding finals, and the youngest one, he was the youngest contestant was in the finals was 16 years old. So Sean White was more than twice his age.
Could have been his dad.
Could have been his dad. I don't think he was. Different last names.
I don't know. Did they do DNA tests? Have you
They
ever
do. They
been?
did a 23andMe test. When imagine just that, because you're that old, they're like, we gotta see.
I mean, it's possible just because it could have worked out that way. Have you ever been snowboarding?
No, I skied a little bit when I was a kid. I would go
I,
once or twice a year.
oh, you went a lot then.
I mean, maybe not twice, once a year at least. Because what we did, like, we would do like one, the very small school private. I went to a small private school for like third through sixth grade, and they would do like one ski trip a year, which makes it sound like a very fancy school, which it was
I
not.
didn't even know we had private schools for those grades here.
Oh yeah, third through sixth, and then back to public school for seventh through 12th. But it was we would be like a one day skiing, and it would be like the kind of place you could go up and back in the
Sugarloaf.
day.
Sugarloaf.
Sugarloaf, Mount Cannon Mountain, all the Worcester Mountain or whatever.
It's not really even a mountain. I went a couple times and I absolutely hated it. I'm like, it's cold. It's not that fun. There's a lot of dickheads around.
I liked it, but I didn't. I wasn't. My family didn't do it. Like it wasn't like a family thing ever, and I wasn't great at it, and it wasn't like I had friends that were like skiing, and I didn't own equipment, and so I think it was like kind of the it, the way that it made financial and logistical sense was for me to go once a year and be like, that was pretty cool. And
I did it.
I don't remember ever like asking my parents about going another time. I was just kind of like, that's what you do. You ski once a year.
I remember kids at school would show up and they'd have like lift passes all over their
Yep.
jackets. Like I
Yep.
got
Yep.
like
Yep.
40 lift passes. Woo, look at
Sure.
me. And
Yep.
I'd just be like, go get fucked, you prick.
Right. Just keep the tags on
Yeah.
all winter. Yeah. That as like a New England winter
Flex.
status move.
Do adults do that? Like, I want to see some dude like walking down the street with just like 700 lift passes on his
Like, I
jacket.
feel like when you're an adult, if you ski that much, you can afford to have a second jacket.
You don't have
You
one
don't just
triple
like
fat goose.
show up at your job at Liberty Mutual in your like giant North Face or whatever the performance brand is for
Your
skiing.
Dallas
You're like,
Cowboys starter jacket covered in.
right, exactly. When you're a kid, like even if you're a kid whose family has money, it's not like you have like a lot of fashion jackets. Like when you're like 10.
Top coats.
Yeah. Peacoat, just like really, really stunting.
I remember I used to buy most of my clothes as a kid at Percy's Army Navy in Melrose
Mhm.
because the guy who owned it was in the Korean War with my grandfather. He
Okay,
used to give us a discount in the Revere Flea Market.
sure.
So in elementary school, I had this, which I kind of wish I had this now. It wouldn't fit me, but it was a 1984 Adidas Olympic tracksuit,
That rules.
but in like 1990.
Yep, even better. Very
And
fun.
I wore it most days. And then the other outfit, because my mother would lay out my clothes for me. Um, Basically, I was dressed like a military sniper, so I had like a black turtleneck and then like gray camo tactical pants.
Just like anyone Jean Reno would play in a movie.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm a sniper. I'm an undercover sniper posing as an Olympiad.
Also a child.
Yes, and also a child. I think we should pitch a TV show where you and I go snowboarding, which would be horrible, but I bet people would really enjoy watching it.
Yeah, it would be called Ouch.
Yes, we call what the fuck? Why are we doing this?
Oh, I tweaked my back just lying on the couch the other day.
Yeah, I've sneezed in the shower and then
Yep.
been debilitated for days. I On Christmas Day, I took a header off my porch.
Oh
I
no.
slipped on some black ice and I had the biggest bruise ever on me. It looked like I was becoming Venom.
Was there a moment where you were like, is this how you become Venom?
Maybe.
Am I
No, I
doing
did have
it?
that moment where you know how when you get injured and for a
Mhm.
second you feel fine, it's like time stops and you're like, okay, I know I'm really badly injured. Like, what is it? You're
Yep.
just waiting for the blood
Right.
or
Where's
yeah.
the throb gonna come?
Yeah, but it was, I mean, it was bad. I was out of, and then my wife reminded me because for some reason as an adult I act like I have like no long-term memory anymore. So anything that happens I'm like, oh man, I can't believe that happened. It never happened. She's like, you fall on the stairs every year. And like last year I got up in the middle of the night to take the dogs out
Yep.
and she had switched where the stairs are. So I leaned over what I thought was a railing, but it wasn't. And
Oh
I
no.
fell off the porch and landed
Oh
on my
no.
chest on the gate, like on the spikes on the gate.
Oh
So
no.
so I
Oh,
had a
that's awful.
it was awful. I had a bruised sternum and it was bad, yeah. So pretty
Yikes.
much every year I take a tumble.
Oh, falling is bad. John Fish has such a great joke about falling as an adult. That like when you're a kid you fall and you get up, and when you're an adult you're like you walk by and you're like that's the place it happened.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And it was when I was a kid, it was every year because I lived on a big hill, and
Hmm.
like you knew that at some point in the winter you were taking a tumble down that entire hill.
I think last time I was at my parents' house, their front stairs were slick and it just snowed just a little bit and you kind of black ice on the stairs. And I did that thing where you don't fall, but like I like skateboarded on my shoes just down
Yep.
like dum, 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 and I like caught myself on the railing and it was like I should have just fallen because I almost like pulled my shoulder out of place. It was just like I'm not I'm not fit for this world anymore.
No, no. You're like this is the apocalypse and I have not evolved. Yeah, I don't think you and I are winter sports guys.
No, and I used to. I mean, I actually there was a period where I didn't. As a kid, I loved the winter. I loved playing in the snow. I loved the snow days off from school. And then when I was an adult, the non-snow days because I was a teacher were like pretty rough. Like the winter cold because when I taught preschool, when it was too cold to bring the kids outside,
Yeah.
or like the gate froze shut, so it's just like, oh, we don't really have a playground, and they just were like inside all day was like a tough day. They had so much energy, and there's only so much you can do like in one classroom. And now and then I had a car and would have to like drive to go out on the road a little bit, and now I'm like mostly in writers' rooms for work. I mean, I remember like 8 years ago. This was like probably right around when I did the first episode of the podcast. I uh, alternate side parking was canceled because it kept snowing. And so I
Right.
just left my car where it was. And then I realized I had to like drive a couple hours for a gig. And I went out to my car and it was frozen into a bank of ice, like fucking Han Solo, like frozen in
Ship it
carbonite.
out.
Yeah, I had to take a shell and it took me probably 2 hours, and it
Oh.
hadn't snowed in days, and I had to like destroy this snowbank to get my car out. It was like at Street Fighter when you would like have to beat up the car for a
Yes.
bonus level.
Yeah.
It was that, but to free the car.
It's funny because I do very few gigs now because it's a whole long thing, but I used to turn down tons of gigs back when people asked me to do them. And one of my rules was between December and March, I would not do a gig that was more than a 10-minute drive from my house.
But that's smart. Like I remember one time uh driving to a gig or from a gig in Randolph. It was like past Boston on 93, and I lived north. Or no, I was probably living in the city at that time. And I went down to Randolph, and there was a Christmas tree that had fallen off a car or a truck and was just like across the right lane of traffic. And I saw a car just hit the Christmas tree and like swerve trying to avoid it and just spin out.
Oh
And I
yeah.
was like, this is nobody should be out on this road.
No.
Certainly not me getting $100 to just eat it in a hotel function room for half an hour.
Yeah, and people would think it was crazy. Like people would ask, like bookers would be like, "You want to do this?" And I'd be like, "No, I don't. I don't do winter." And they'd be like, "What?"
It's like it's also like what do you to drive to Maine, right? To drive for like a 3 hour gig in Maine. I would leave. I mean, depending on when it was, I would leave like hours early for stuff too.
Oh yeah.
I once the earliest I ever got to a gig out of state. No hotel, I don't think. I think it was like up and back in one
Oh,
night.
yeah,
I
they'd
was
never
working
do
with
that.
Kelly McFarland and Carolyn Plummer, who are wonderful.
Oh
And
yes.
I was opening, and I was like, well, I can't be late. And so I left like it was like 2.5 hours up to Maine. I left like 6 hours early, being like, oh, there might be traffic. It's like a weekend, people getting away. And I was 3 hours early to this gig, and it was pre smartphone, so it wasn't like I could just be like, oh, where can I go hang out for a couple hours and like eat a burger or something. So I think I just sat in the parking lot and like read a book or something.
There's nothing wrong with that. I would usually find a mall or something and like
I
wander
didn't know,
around.
like it was the kind of thing where I was like, well, how do I find in this
Yeah.
era?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's what an awful thing we did.
Hmm. And still do. I mean, I
Yeah.
still love doing stand up. I've been on a little bit of a break because of the Omicron wave. I kind of took a couple months and I was off, and I'm gonna go back out this weekend a little bit in the city. But like I don't have that thing of like I don't own a car anymore, so I'm not like it's not like I'm taking gigs of like, oh, this is how I work. Like if I want to, especially my first couple years in New York, if I wanted to work doing comedy on the weekends, it was going back up to New England,
Yeah.
right? Or like
Yeah.
I was out on the road featuring. And so now I can, if I want to work doing stand up on the weekends, I can do it in the city. Especially when I'm like writing during the week. And so yeah, I just remember like driving through New England being like, uh, hours. Like it takes me an
Of
hour
course.
to go 15 miles because it's just I'm driving 20 miles an hour, and then just seeing people zooming up ahead of me and then seeing them in a ditch 5 minutes later.
Yeah. And it's like, why are people even at this show?
Right. How badly did you not want to stay home tonight?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah. Which makes it even worse because they're like, I came out and I almost died. You better be fucking
yep.
funny.
Yep. Yep. And then it's like, but it's also not like a big hot crowd. It's like
No.
the 11 people that were told like, oh yeah, you can't get your money back if you cancel now. And they're
Guys.
like, well then I'm fucking going to the show.
Oh yeah. They're like, well, I want to see if I win that fucking raffle.
Yep. Brutal.
Ugh.
Absolutely brutal.
Ugh. So I don't want to keep you all night because I will, but anything else? Did anything pop out this week? Like tomorrow,
Let me see.
What are you gonna watch?
So
I'm
the Olympics jumped out at me for sure. Women's figure skating short program, that seems fun. Um, the huh.
I was supposed to have Nancy Kerrigan on this show, by the way.
Oh damn, that would have been great.
She was gonna do it around the Olympic time, but then she couldn't do it because of her scheduling. But she's very nice. Yeah, I and she still the SNL episode she hosted. There's some of
I
the
remember
funniest
that one.
sketches.
That my family still to this day will quote the figure skating one with her and Chris Farley where he I mean like it's kind of just a fat joke, right? But he got so big and powerful in the off season that he keeps like throwing her too
Yeah,
far and
yeah.
stuff. And but the line that we always quote is where they go at the very beginning, he goes, Kenny G, a bold choice. And it's just like
I I always quote the line from, and I think we might have talked about this when you were on the show. There's a sketch where she's in a parade in a small town in Rhode Island,
mhm.
and the joke is everyone keeps apologizing to her about how shitty the town is. So like she's on the float with the mayor and everything, and I think it's Kevin Nealon. He goes, "I just want to thank you for coming to this town that's just like a big toilet bowl full of puke."
I think yeah. So I think I'm looking at Wednesday. There's this show called Stuck that's premiering. Doctors remove things from where they aren't supposed to be. That's not to my liking. I won't watch that.
Have you ever gotten
Um,
anything stuck in you?
I don't think so. Not more than like a splinter.
Yeah,
Have
nothing up
you?
the nose or anything. No, I don't think I've ever had
Oh, I
anything
mean, I
removed.
think when I was a little kid, there I had like a pea or a Cheerio or
Raisin.
something, but that was
Yeah.
pretty like, shoof, you kind of blast that out. Um, but yeah, I mean, Olympics. It's what do we got? Women's alpine skiing, women's ice hockey. I feel like this is the draw, right? There's a bunch of stuff that I'm not that I don't think I would watch live, but this week is truly saved by the Olympics coverage. If I was looking for something to watch,
Do you remember?
um,
I think it was the mid '90s. Like it was probably the biggest Olympics I can remember, and people would pay a ridiculous amount of money for pay-per-view. There was like a red channel, a white channel, and a blue
yeah,
channel,
yeah, yeah,
and it was like $1,000 to watch the Olympics that week.
wild.
Now, no, like people hardly give a shit now, so
And
they're
it's
like,
on like NBC, and then it spills over into CNBC and Peacock, and it's like if you have TV, you have the Olympics. I mean,
I-
I think you can just download Peacock. But like women's half pipe skiing, yeah, I'll watch that. Um, I mean, it's like movies on TV. Some of them are too good. Like the idea of like watching Rachel getting married at 2 a.m. on the Indieplex network is just like, why would I emotionally do that to myself when I could watch it like in the light of day when I would feel less, it was less harrowing.
"That's an
Um,
insomnia watch."
yeah, for sure. The Fugitive at 8 p.m. on AMC is like the platonic ideal of a cable movie. I feel like that's like Shawshank territory right there. The
Oh yeah, that's a
Fugitive.
Sunday afternoon dad watch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're just like, why not? Um, but the Olympics. And then what am I? I'm at Friday now. Oh, yeah. I mean, like, sure, like the French Connection at 1:15, or I could rent it for $4 on any streaming service and watch it not at 1:15.
Yeah, like I'm like, who's just? That's just got to be people just flipping.
Right, right,
Because I don't even
right.
think
Who's
people use DVRs anymore.
I? There's a couple shows that I do because Bob's Burgers we have on DVR just like permanently, and you can fast forward the ads, which you can't do watching it like on
On
demand.
streaming. Yeah.
But men's freestyle halfpipe. This week is for sure saved by the Olympics. Like it's there's none of the like premieres I don't think have been compelling to me, and the stuff that's listed because it's obviously they can't list every show that's on television.
Right.
It
Right.
would be like a voluminous encyclopedia of every week that they would have to deliver to your home. Um,
But there are shows in here that sound like lazy parodies from a bad
I
sketch
mean,
show.
Stuck was like that's the series premiere. I feel like that either existed before or has been a joke before.
Yeah, Dr. Pimple Popper.
That's real. Yep, that's a real thing.
There's something called Married at First Sight.
Oh yeah, that's a popular one.
Yeah, see, I have no idea. There's a show in here called Heavy Rescue.
Um, yeah, it's like truly demoralizing to realize that like so little comedy that I could ever aspire to working on will reach a wider audience than a show called like Oops, My Dick Fell Off, and every week it's the story of like four guys whose dicks fell off by accident.
Yeah, like My 600 Pound Life, like this stuff. I'm just like, who's watching this?
Yeah, yeah, some of it's a bummer. I mean,
It
like, there's some stuff. It not to say that there's no place. Like, I totally understand the appeal of someone watching like a Property Brothers or something. Like, if real
Sure.
estate is your thing and looking
Yeah,
at
I
the
love
renovation,
Hometown. Yeah.
yeah, all that stuff. But like, if the shows that are just like, nail in the eyeball, and you're like,
Yeah.
every week there's a different person with a nail in their eyeball.
Scrotum destruction?
Yeah, it's like I thought that was the porn thing, and no, it's like nope, it's
Nope.
medical.
Nope, it's on TLC. Yeah, it's all the rest is all like twisted killers.
Yep. And that's like not really my thing. I'm like a big I watch a lot of comedy, which I think some comedy people don't, but I like a classic type sitcom. We would balance throughout the whole pandemic. We would try to watch like a kind of compelling and grossing show, and then we would balance it out with like we watched all of Cheers, we watched all of Seinfeld, we watched all of 30 Rock. I'm trying to think of what other comedy. We did Party Down again. Happy Endings. So we watched a lot of like fun light comedy, but also I think like some of my favorite shows in the last few years have been What We Do in the Shadows,
Yep.
uh, the show which is fucking great. I really love Black Monday, another Showtime show,
I
very
love
funny.
Joe Pera talks with
Joe
you.
Pera, yeah, yeah, yeah. There's so much like I love that kind of stuff, and I'm like a tougher sell on a grittier drama. It just like sticks with me, and I'm very squeamish, and it sticks with me in an embarrassing way.
Well, I'm always just like, who cares? Like, I love show like Joe Pera is a big one, and How to with
With John Wilson,
John Wilson.
great.
Like those shows, especially, they're great. But also, I watch them and I'm like, I don't even know how you would begin to approach writing this.
Yeah, it's
So
fascinating.
I don't even think about it, and it's so much easier for me to get lost in it. Same with all the stuff that the Kings do, like The Good Fight and
Oh, sure.
Evil and The Good Wife.
Yep.
Like those are so beyond my skill level of comprehension that I'm
Yeah.
like, I can just sit and watch them.
Well, that's how I felt watching Yellow Jackets because I just don't have that kind of imagination to like create a mystery. Like my favorite like genre, like a thing that I'll always watch is a heist. I just read Colson Whitehead's Harlem Shuffle, his newest book, and it's just like a great heist novel. And it's I'm sure there's like so much good crime writing out there, but this one Maris had just read and recommended to me, and it was so good. And I just like love a good heist, and I love a bad heist, but
Yeah.
I don't think my brain could like invent a good new heist. Like it's I feel like when I read it, it's always magic to me.
I wrote a script about a heist once,
Hmm.
and the premise was it was this like shitty strip mall,
Hmm.
and it was gonna get bought out by like a Walmart type store.
Hmm.
So all the owners of these weird businesses uh, gathered together to make a fake heist of the strip mall, thinking
Oh,
that it
that's
would
funny.
discourage the place from buying the thing.
Yep.
Maybe I'll revisit that. I think
I
I like that.
pitched I pitched a movie one time that I don't even know if I own this pitch anymore, so I'll say it. But I pitched a movie that was like, have you seen Sour Grapes? It's
Yes,
a yeah,
Larry
so
David.
it's a no, I'm sorry. There's a different Sour Grapes that's about it's a documentary about
Okay.
wine fraud, which is
Okay.
great. And so kind of like thinking I had that in mind, and I pitched a wine heist movie where like the employees of a restaurant ripped off their kind of dickhead owner's private stash of wine he was never going to drink. Um and that was like the best heist idea I've ever had. And it was
That's a
still
good
just
one.
like, what if they stole wine?
Well, we did establish you're often at the liquor store.
Yep, I am. I mean, it's probably 2, 3 times a day. They know me by name. They don't. They can look at my thumb and know my fingerprint
Yeah,
at
I'm
this
just getting
point.
changed for the laundromat. What's your go-to? What do you buy there?
At the
I've
liquor
never known
store.
you to be much of a drinker. Like,
I
what,
wasn't. When I lived in Boston, I was not a drinker hardly at all, and I've become just a real degenerate in New York City, where I never have to drive. Um, but I used so what we usually have. I mean, what we usually have on hand is Maris will have some wine. a white wine, a Sauvignon Blanc, in the refrigerator, and we'll have like a vodka and a whiskey on hand for mixing with a flavored seltzer or a Diet Coke or something, and then I'll have like a nice bottle of bourbon just to drink on the
Oh
rocks.
wow, you are an old man now.
I mean, that's not all. That's not all in one night usually.
No, that's
That's
usually one afternoon.
yeah. That's this is usually before I show up at work.
I get this idea for a heist movie where I come in and I steal
Steal
the
my
wine out of your
booze.
fridge.
Yeah, I mean, saved my life.
Yeah.
But it is. Yeah. Well, here's something I found, and this is like, I feel like I was like, I want to support local businesses. They're always very nice. They're very like kind. And then I found out that like all the apps that you can buy, like even if you're getting like a grocery delivery and you add like a bottle of bourbon on there, the stuff they have is like 20% cheaper than my local liquor store.
Oh.
And I was like, that's a substantial difference. That like, and I was like, I had to really like consider how much do I want to support a local business, because I don't know if it's that Uber thing where the prices got really low until the taxi drivers started dying by suicide at City Hall,
Right.
and
And then they're the only gang in town,
then
so
they're
then they
like in
can
town.
jack them up.
But
Yeah.
so I'm like, is that what Fresh? I can't imagine that Fresh Direct is like putting all the liquor stores out of business. But I was like, I bought they were like, oh, this is like a limited edition bottle, and I was like, oh, that's very nice. And I looked it up just to be careful. You're not just be careful, just to be like curious about like how much is this another place. And I was like, oh, I could have ordered this for like 30% cheaper.
Oh. See,
Yeah.
I went to like a big liquor store like a while ago.
Mhm.
What a good story this is, Ken.
Go
And
on.
I realized, well, first of all, there's a liquor store in our town that the kid who was the manager, who I think still listens to this show, he was like, "Hey, what are you doing here? I follow you on Twitter. Why
Yeah,
you
you're
don't
not a
drink?"
drinker at all.
Yeah, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm getting some for my wife," or like, "I have to go visit my dad," and so he'd always be like, "Look at this cool thing. Oh, she'll
Yeah.
like this or whatever." But I discovered there's like Total Wine and More, which is like a huge, like it's like a supermarket of alcohol, not
Yeah.
sponsored. Um, but they have a whole non-alcoholic section, like a giant section that's like the size of a
Oh,
regular liquor store.
interesting.
There's like non-alcoholic craft beers
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like all crazy stuff that like so I got some of those. There,
Yeah.
I got a non-alcoholic craft beer called Punk as Fuck. And I'm like, all right.
There was when I the night before Thanksgiving last year, 2021. We Maris and I came up to visit my family, and we went to the liquor store to get like a couple bottles of wine in case, because a couple friends were gonna come over and
Go
like
to
have a
Rapid,
drink on the back porch at Rapid.
Rapid
And
Liquors.
Rapid Liquors. And the line was like from the front of the store, probably 20 people deep, and we were like, I guess we'll just be here for a while, and we were all masked and stuff. And it was the most efficient line I've ever stood in my entire life. I was like, Rapid Liquors, you have earned your name. It was I think about it to this day. I'm like, now that's airport security. You should take your cues from Rapid Liquors in Stoneham, Massachusetts.
Which is funny because if people didn't know there was a real store, it sounds like people who lick things really fast.
Yeah. Oh, Rapid Liquors. The new game show.
Yeah, Rapid Liquors. You got who can get to the
Ellen
center
hosts it, and
yeah,
it's like who can finish a lollipop
the
first.
fastest. I think that we're not that far from that. But Josh, I hope that if that is a real show, I hope that you get to showrun it.
Thank you. Honestly, I feel like I'm ready to step into that role. Thank you.
Well, I loved talking to you. It's
This
been a
is a blast.
while. I am bad about keeping in touch with people. I know that the Boston comics have like weekly meetups online, and I stopped getting invited because I'm not fun. Um, but but no, I'm truly impressed and happy with your success because
Oh, thank you.
you're such a good dude, and I always liked you and the stuff that you produced.
Thank
So
you.
um,
That's very
it's
kind of you to say. And this is a real pleasure. It was so nice to do this. And happy anniversary. That's
thank you.
incredible.
And so
Awesome.
in 8 more years, I'm going to bother you
I'll
again.
be back. Yeah. Or dead.
If it, well, probably I'll be dead, but maybe we can do this beyond the grave, or we'll pre-tape it. Maybe after this, we'll pre-tape one
We'll
for eight
pre-tape
years.
it to be released in 16 years after. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm already dead. The saddest sentence that's ever been spoken.
Well, we have just captured our ghosts.